Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello. Hello.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you this week?
Yeah, life has been taken up by one thing, so I really can't even say I've done. Well, you know what? Since the last time we were on here, I went to Cosign.
That's true.
Which is a sci-fi fantasy convention here in Colorado Springs, which almost didn't happen because December 30th, and this conference, this convention was January 14th to 16th. Mm-hmm. December 30th, new ownership took over the hotel and contacted everybody and said, yeah, we're not going to honor the event contracts because we're just not going to do events anymore. We're not doing that anymore because they're going to turn into apartments. And so they were scrambling to try and find a new location for this con, which you just can't do. That's not how it works.
You
2
can't
weeks
do that
before your con. No. And they already have money sunk into this and all of that. And they actually were able to convince the hotel to have it. So we knew about a week before the convention that it was even on.
Yep.
So I had this book coming out February 1st, I think it is, or 2nd. And so I didn't even order promo stuff for it because it wasn't going to be out in time for the con, even though I was doing a signing and able to sell books. So I wanted to have something out so that I found my old Avery postcard, things, and then found the template online and put together some postcards to take and printed them out the night before for that. But it was a good con. It was fun. There's good people there. And
good.
First I've seen, other than Mile High Con, back in October, some people, although I still did that. I go to my panels, then I hide in my room.
I think there's a lot more of that now.
Yeah. I mean, I was social at the cons before, and then I would exhaust myself even more because I'm not an extrovert, and it would drain me. It still drained me. I went into a coma for 2 days.
Do you know, it took me so long to learn that even doing something you enjoy is exhausting.
Yeah.
Because I found that out doing the Facebook Lives that I do for the shop. Because I loved, what I am. Give me a microphone. I'm happy. So I love it. I love being funny. I love talking to people. I love the whole thing. And then I get home and I'm just fucking brain dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is it tiring if I like doing it? And I'm like, well, I'm old and and it is standing. So,
but you also have to be on for a thing. And that, for me at least, that takes a lot of energy. I mean, I'm tired after we record the podcast because we're on. So you have to fill in the spaces and you have to be constantly thinking ahead so that you don't have gaps. So, it's exhausting. And then 2 days after that, I was doing a 2-hour horror panel.
That's right.
For Bike Speak writers. So, then I was listen, I love talking horror and I just like talking about things I care about. That's my thing. I can't do small talk. I've never been able to do small talk. It doesn't work that way. That's your job.
I was going to say
when we go to cons and stuff. That's your job.
That's why you were tired. I wasn't there with you to make small talk with people.
So I still wasn't even feeling recovered from Cosign. And I was like, I don't want to do this today. Which is terrible, but it was true. I was like, I'm so tired. But did it, and it was great talking to some fellow horror peeps and having these great conversations about it. So it's not like I was sad I did it. I just was just so tired. So then the rest of the week was literally, it's just all marketing for the upcoming book. And I haven't written a word since I finished writing that book. And one story I wrote after that because I had a deadline for something from before. I was so mad when I woke up the other day because I dreamt that I was dreaming the plot of a novel. And when I woke up, I put everything on hold. I told everybody, because I had to write down the plot of the novel. Then I really woke up. And I couldn't remember the plot of the novel. And I was so freaking mad. Because I would have. I was like, I need a pen. I need a piece of paper. No, couldn't remember any of it. Because that, there's So much of that. Even just not even a dream, like thinking of story ideas as I'm falling asleep and I'm like, no freaking way. And am I sitting up right now because I'm about to fall asleep and writing this down? I'll remember it in the morning. No, I won't remember it in the morning. That's the thing.
So if you had a little voice recorder?
No, because I don't want to, I have insomnia issues. I'm not going to disturb that in any way, shape, or form.
I gotcha.
So, yeah, no. Me talking, I mean, if Jeff knows not to talk to me if he wakes up when the light is out and I'm not reading. And like in the morning, if I wake up because of the alarm, because he gets up with the kids, then he knows not to talk. Because the second I engage my voice or my brain to talk, it's done. I won't sleep. There won't be any sleep, period. So yeah, no, it's...
Yeah, when I wake up, if the brain engages, if I have to go to the bathroom, it's like I try to do it. I don't turn on the light. I move very slowly, hoping that I'll be able to get back in bed and go back to sleep. But if I think, did I put cat food on the grocery list?
Then it's done.
It's all over.
Yeah.
It's all over.
Dude,
and I'm getting up when you're thinking about going to bed.
That's right. So that Colorado Springs Foodies group that I'm still in, I posted asking for best milkshakes because I forgot that when I finish a book, I was my schedule with this one was so intense because I had when I wanted it out.
You didn't get your milkshake.
I didn't get my milkshake yet, and I had forgotten, and I'm going off sugar soon because it's supposed to help the fibro, and I know that when I'm on full keto, which I'm not doing yet, my pain, like my migraine level is less and everything. So it is very much a good thing for me to be on keto, but it's hard to do when you have teenagers and all of this. And now that I've gotten them helping make meals, so I just can't do it right now. It's just not worth it. But I am going to do the sugar-free, which is also hard. Too much food that there's sugar in that's not dessert. A lot. Like all of it.
Spaghetti sauce.
Right. Barbecue sauce, she said sadly.
Oh,
depending.
I was going to say there's some brand I bought that was really good that had way lower sugar.
But I really love to go to the barbecue joints.
Yes.
So anyway, I'll have to work on that. But anyway, I posted asking, all right, best milkshake in town because I'm going to make it a good one. Because it could be the next book I finish. I'm doing keto ice cream. Yes, but half of them were in my yard. And I was like, you dumb fucks.
It was okay. The first one was okay.
The first one was okay, but here's the thing. I knew the joke was going to get made, so I almost put it in the thing so that nobody would do it. But now there's 20 people who haven't bothered reading how many people made the fucking joke before they did, and it's really just lowering my faith in humanity right now that they're just fucking stupid and that they all think that they're that awesome.
Do you know how glad I am that I did not make that joke right
Super glad right now, right? Because it's actually like beyond getting on my nerves now, and I almost just deleted the whole post because I'm like, stop. And then like one dude hit on a chick that said it, and now they're having a conversation in one of the things, and I get notified every time somebody replies to my fucking post. You can delete them. I'm going to just delete the whole post now because they annoyed me.
I'm trying to remember if it was that group.
I have a lot of opinions on this one stupid thing. It's just a week of this has gotten on my nerves.
I'm trying to remember what they jumped all over somebody for. Somebody posted a review. She posted a picture and a review. And it wasn't a huge long review. I went to this pizza place and the pizza didn't look like what I ordered.
Yeah.
Because it was half one thing, half another. And people just ravaged her.
Oh, you're not allowed to criticize anything on there.
But she didn't say anything. She just said they messed up my order.
Right, I think I saw it.
And then later, like 2 responses down, she said, oh, yes, they did correct it. I mean, as soon as I brought it to their attention, they fixed it. It's all been taken care of. It's fine. And people are like, well, you should have gone back in and edited your post.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you the Facebook police now?
They are.
And then it was, you can't say anything negative. Well, I would like to hear somebody's, and I just was like, I'm going to lose my, I would never post again if I was that woman.
Nope.
But at the same time, if I went somewhere and something was not right, I would say, I would not hesitate to put that in a review and then say, and here's how it resolved or didn't resolve or whatever. I think people should be free to, I don't think you should come in and trash a place, but...
No. But if you're like, this happened, and then just a warning. Because sometimes it's, hey, just a warning. Such and such is an issue at this place. And they're like, you can't post it here. But then they'll post all kinds of other asinine trolling things, but they're just skirting the line, you know? And it's like, ugh. So, I will say it's a pet peeve of mine, though, when people don't read a conversation, a post, and then they post stuff to their, like, there's a meme, and it's true. And it's like, original post. I went to the store on Fillmore to get an apple. First response, what'd you go there for? Second response, which one did you go to? Third response, what store was that? And that's literally how half my posts on my page play out. And I'm like, did you guys not read the words in the... So it's already a pet peeve of mine.
I posted for a friend a question about a spot to go for lunch. She wanted to go for her birthday. Her son was taking her. And I said, here's the catch. The restaurant has to be open for lunch on Mondays.
Which most of the small restaurants are not.
Are not. And I get that, which is why I specified that. So somebody made a response, and I said, that is a great restaurant. They are not open for lunch. And they doubled down and said, well, they always used to be.
I saw that.
So I posted the link to their website, and their website says they're not.
So yeah, I got into it with somebody on a Colorado Adventures page, so I'm just not in there anymore. But they deleted the administrators deleted my post, and I was pissed. So anyway, I'm pretty much getting there with foodies, and I've said that before. But I'm like, but I want to hear about the new restaurants, and you don't hear about it anywhere else.
Exactly.
And there's so many places that I can try if I can just stay in there. But yeah, it's a rough because there's so many annoying people on there. And I block them. I already said that too. But then there's somebody new to fill their shoes each time.
To fill the void.
But yeah, and they're like recommending places that are just evenings. And they're right, like you ask for lunch. And then I was that person though, because somebody asked for some place they could take their dog. And they were like, nowhere with food, because the rules basically, if there's food, you can't, except we have Pub Dog, which there's food. And I posted, Lazy Dog has had dogs in the restaurant when I've been there, even though they have food. And it used to be on their website. Well, that's gone now. And so I think they got busted, but I didn't know that yet. So I went in there then and posted my correction to myself. I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe it used to be, appears they got busted. Here's their website. They don't do it anymore, but you can be outside. So, I mean, I corrected myself. Why can't somebody just do that?
I don't know.
They can't. So, let's talk Peacemaker.
Oh my God.
And I didn't even know it existed. And somehow after I posted about it, now I can see everybody else's posts about it.
I had sort of vaguely heard it, but in the past, I have not been the biggest John Cena fan.
Oh, really? I like him.
I don't dislike him. I was fairly neutral. And I think he's made a couple of movies that I just thought were not to my taste.
Gotcha. Were they action movies?
No.
Oh,
they were the dumb comedies, yeah.
See, I first saw him, I think, really in the Amy Schumer movie. And she says it's like fucking an ice sculpture or whatever.
Okay,
and then there's a ton more to it, but I'm not going to...
Yes, I remember that. I did... So I didn't have a good expectation going into this movie, or going into this series. If you haven't watched it, do not fast forward
through the intro,
the opening sequence.
My God. So we watched Matrix Revolutions on HBO, and we exit out of it. Which, by the way, it's not great. I agree with people who are saying that Matrix Revolutions isn't great, but I liked it as kind of like a revisit as a fan of the original series. And I love Keanu. So there were cool elements and then there were not great elements. But anyway, I'm not even talk about it. It doesn't even factor. But then I see Peacemaker. And so unlike many people, I kind of liked the Suicide Squad films. Again, I'm an easy please. If I'm entertained by a movie, I'm pretty easy to please. And so, because I'm going there to shut my brain off. And that's definitely what you do with the Suicide Squad movies.
Yes.
So in Suicide Squad 2, John Cena is Peacemaker. And he's like the All-America. He's the Captain America. Except he's a little bit bigoted. And he's a little bit too literal. And so there's all these issues.
And he is going to have peace if he has to kill every man, woman,
and child
to
for
get it.
There we go. That says it. So anyway, we see that, and I'm like, what's that? Click on that. I haven't even heard about this. And so Jeff starts it, and that intro hits. And I am laughing my ass off, and it pops up, skip intro. And I went, don't you touch it.
Yes, I've only watched 2 episodes, But I did
Us
not.
too.
I did not even skip it in the second one.
I know. Jeff goes, you don't want me to skip it to you. And I said, eventually I'm going to get tired of this, but that day is not today.
It's just too cute. And I'm sorry, that one of the characters.
They're so stiff and serious.
One of the characters is a bald eagle whose name is
Eagly.
What would you call your daughter? Daughterly?
But it cracks me up. It's still, the stupid eagle gets laughs out of me too, because it's like an animatronic bird or something. I don't know. It's a pretty good one. But it's actually like a full character.
Yeah.
And it's not a talking animal. It's
No,
not
no,
like
no.
that kind of character, but it's all
It is. Did you not cringe every time his father?
Oh, God.
His father is such a...
And what's his name? Jason Patrick?
Not Jason Patrick. Something... He was in the Terminator.
He's the Terminator 2 liquid metal dude.
Yes, that guy.
And he took over for Mulder in X-Files
yes.
and lost me. So he's not ever been my favorite, but actually he's pretty funny.
His hair...
Oh my God.
It's like another character. It just stands up. Like there's no rhyme or reason. It's just this bush on top of his head.
There's so much though. There's just so much to him. And he is a bigot, to be very clear. Oh my God.
He is a white supremacist.
Yes.
He is. And he's a terrible father.
Yes. It's all criticism. It's like, and it's kind of cliched. That's kind of a cliched character. And yet still it works and is entertaining in the story because you have an all-American blah, blah, blah patriot, we'll say.
Yes.
For a superhero. And so it's
yes.
it's accurate.
I'm enjoying it a lot. So I will probably watch more of it tonight, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, there's at least 2 episodes that are on there ready, but we've been watching one at a time. I'm not saying we've been waiting a week because we came into it just this weekend.
Me too.
But we're like, all right, we watched one. Now we're going to move on to a brainless reality show like we've been doing. Now it's Too Hot to Handle, which is, it's beautiful people in their 20s who think they're going to Pleasure Island to party and get told they're on Too Hot to Handle, which is, you guys are going to sleep in the same beds. You're going to be around each other constantly, half dressed, and you're not allowed to kiss, to do any heavy petting, or have sex. But if you can make it through the entirety of the show, you get to split a pot of $200,000. But for each time you break the rules, we take out X amount of money. So a kiss is $3,000. Boom, out.
So it's out for everybody?
Yes. So if one couple screws around, everybody pays the price. But it's unbelievable how hard it is for these fucking idiots.
I'm writing this down.
Just to keep their hands to themselves it can't even be that long. It just can't even be that long for a season for them to be recording this. In fact, it's like every day somebody's breaking the rules. And then like one couple broke the rules so much in season 3 that they're like, all right, we're doubling how much each, breaking of the rules takes away from the pot.
I can't believe their cohort didn't kill them.
They're about to. Pretty sure. So, yeah, it's like, but they're pretty and dumb. The thing that we found was funny is that Jeff and I looked at each other and we're like, these people aren't even, they're just supposed to be beautiful people. And like, we're really not finding most of them attractive. They're not even as attractive as the people who are hired to work on the yachts on below deck. That blew our minds right there. I was like, maybe we're just finally at an age where that generation isn't attractive? What's attractive to them isn't attractive to us? It was really weird. But anyway, they brought these 2 guys and they're doing a slow walk and I'm all, oh.
But taste is so, attraction and taste is so individual.
Yeah, it is. It's just, I swear the first season I felt like they were more attractive, and it's in season 3. I skipped season 2 because I watched this when it first came out like a couple years ago. And then I was like, oh, hey, look, there's another season. And since we're out of below decks, we had to watch something. So that's what it was.
I still am addicted to all of the cooking shows. So, well, not all of them.
We each have our brain shut off and that's it.
There's something about watching people kneading bread. It's the Great British Baking Show.
I love kneading bread myself, actually. For a while, I was making fresh bread. When the kids were little, I was doing a lot of stuff because I had energy.
Did you make the baby food and puree it and freeze it?
I even had the little grinder that you could get so that they could eat the
food mill.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And you could take it with you. It had a little suction cup.
Now I'm like, oh, you're hungry? There's something in the closet, I'm sure. Like the pantry. Go feed yourself. Shit.
There's some sugar-coated cereal somewhere with your name on it.
And that's all you need to know about parenting.
Yep. All that stuff you do when they're babies, it doesn't last.
It's maybe for some people. I know like super moms out there, and I'm like, you know what? Good on you. I got other shit to do, and I'm not going to be that person who didn't have a life. Sorry. I watched that happen. And it's terrible. But hey, do you want to start?
I can. I was like, whoa, I thought you were going to. Oh, we're chatty. Okay. So what's really weird is last week I did one that involved a mother and daughter. So this one also involves a mother.
Oh.
A horrible
involves
mother.
I mean, not truly any mothers.
Mother.
If you're thinking of starting a podcast or even just starting to research it, Buzzsprout is your go-to source for information and hosting. They have tons of videos and write-ups on everything you need to know about recording and distributing a podcast, and they even provide easy ways to get analytics on how your podcast is doing. We use Buzzsprout for our podcast hosting, and through them, we've been able to connect with tons of resources and distributors. Following a link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support our show. A win-win. Not only do they help you get started, but they also do small things to encourage you, such as awarding you badges as you hit various milestones. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world.
So my sources are Wikipedia, Murderpedia, Find a Grave, and Medium.com, the archive for Medium.com. And here's what pulled me into this is that we've talked about, I'm going to just give it away right at the beginning. We've talked about poisoners in the past.
Yeah.
But most of them have been quite a long time ago. And this one isn't super, but this one happened in the 60s. So it's a little bit more recent.
You know, I just have to throw this out there. So I've been seeing, for whatever reason, because I read one and now they're popping up in my Facebook, of course. There's a Reddit thread that's, Am I the Asshole?
Oh, I love that thread.
Okay. So this woman goes on and posts like, I just found out that my boyfriend's been grinding up slugs from the garden and putting them in my food for the last couple weeks. Am I overreacting? Am I the asshole for being upset about that? And it turns out then it keeps growing. And it's like, oh my God, I have this update. He's been doing that because it was one of his friends that came to her and told her, I have pictures. He sent me texts.
Why
saying
is he was doing this?
Well, that's the thing. She confronts him about it and he's like, I just thought it would be funny. And then she turns out she's had a bunch of health issues. And now she starts finding out that he's been doing this for longer than she knew. He's been putting other things in food in the past. He finally admits it to her. He's clearly a sociopath. So he admits, well, I started by spitting on your toast. And then, like, that wasn't doing anything. So at one point, her snail disappeared. She had, like, some sort of special pet snail type thing, like an African snail or something. And it disappeared. And he was like, well, it died, and so I got rid of it. No, he ground it up and he put it in her food and he put it in curry. And she had thought something was up because as she went to eat it, he kept giggling. And she was like, what the hell? So she got freaked out and she put it down and she went to her room. Then he comes in later and he's like, okay, it's just that I put a bunch of chili powder in it. And he had then, but there hadn't been chili powder in it before. So anyway, it's this whole freaking mess. And he's been actually, she's been getting ulcers and stuff because he's been putting shit in her food, man. So anyway, and she's like, I mean, am I overreacting by being upset about that? Everybody's like, run, bitch, run.
Run.
He's poisoning you.
Yeah. Or working up to it.
The hospital's like, this could literally kill you eventually. The stuff that he's doing, like when it all starts coming out. And he's like, I never did it to the pets. And people are like, he absolutely did it to the pets. Take them and run. So anyway, that just made me think of that. I was like, it's a modern poisoning.
Well, and now everybody uses antifreeze.
Ah, yes.
Because it's sweet.
And you can't taste the almond.
Yeah. So anyway, Janie Lou Hickox was born on Christmas Day in 1932.
So that sucks for her.
Kind of does. She married Charles Clayton Gibbs, who is 6 years her senior. Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out. She married him when she was 15. So she had her son Roger at age 16 and then had Melvin at 19 and Marvin at 22. Who the hell names their kids Melvin and Marvin?
They do.
At the age of 34, Janie is known in her community as a devout Christian. She's a quiet woman who's very active in the church. This is in Cordell, I think that's how you pronounce it, Georgia. She ran a daycare for children of mothers who had to work. She was known for her strong work ethic, and she had a reputation as a woman who loved to cook for her family.
Mm-hmm.
So in late 1965, Janie cooked dinner for her husband and sprinkled it with lead and arsenic. A little bit of rat poison. He was hospitalized, and nobody batted an eye when his loving wife shows up at the hospital with soup for him, also laced with rat poison. He finally died in January of 1966, and the doctor diagnosed liver disease because the symptoms are, and why would they?
Right. If you don't have suspicions,
yes,
it's really hard to decide to check for something.
Yes.
Like that.
And it's not, you have to test specifically.
Think about how
arsenic.
many cases have just never been discovered.
Yes, probably. So as a good church member, Janie tithed 10% of the life insurance money she received to the church. Because they were all supporting her. These were her people. This was her community. That's in January. In August of 1966, Junie pulls out her special seasoning again and poisoned her youngest son, Marvin, who was 13 at the time. Poor Marvin. After collapsing due to abdominal pains, because of his father's diagnosis with liver disease, they assumed he had inherited it. And his official cause of death was listed as hepatitis.
Great.
So again, 10% of the life insurance went to the church. And again, the church members rallied around her. This was her family. And as a matter of fact, they have people quoted saying she was so kind and so courageous in her grief and only rarely broke down.
Wonder why.
Yeah. So in January, that was in August, following January of 1967, she poisoned her middle son, Melvin, who was 16 years old. He complained of headaches and cramps and died before they could even get him to the hospital.
Wow.
Apparently...
Usually it takes longer than this. She must have been putting a lot.
I think she stepped it up.
Okay.
This time, the cause of death, and I don't know how they came to this, but it was listed as a rare muscle disorder. Don't know which one. But that was on several different... I got that from different sources. Again, the church is supporting her and caring for her, and she gave them 10% of the life insurance again. So Janie...
And she probably thinks she's a good Christian, too, the whole time. That's
quite possibly, was distraught at the loss of her loved ones. Fortunately, her eldest son, Roger, was still living at home. So was his new bride and his new bouncing baby boy, Ronnie. So the neighbors remember how happy and how proud Janie was to be grandmother. Now, she's a 35-year-old grandmother, that's pretty young to be grandma. But she took him all over town. She showed him off. When people came over, she couldn't wait to show him the grandbaby. Very healthy child, no issues, and then he died. He fell ill for no apparent reason and died on October 28th of 1967. His father died shortly thereafter. This is Roger, on December 24th. So just a little less than 2 months later. I would like to note at this point that Janie had refused to have autopsies performed.
Of course.
Yeah, we know why. But she cited her religious beliefs. She didn't want them cut up. She didn't want the bodies desecrated. However, when Roger died, the new wife is the next of kin now. And she wasn't having any of that shit. She insisted on an autopsy. So investigators found that Roger had died from ingesting a fatal amount of arsenic. And Janie was arrested on Christmas Day. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Janie. In short order, the other bodies were exhumed and examined and tested. And when I say in short order, the powers that be were so incensed by just the sheer audacity in such a short amount of time that they were exhumed and examined on the spot.
Wow.
They didn't take them somewhere and examine them. They took the sample. They did it right there in the cemetery. All were found to contain high levels of arsenic. So I also want to mention, because I think this came up last time, that people are people. And so they were rubbernecking. The dirt roads leading to the cemetery were filled with cars of people wanting to catch a glimpse of the corpses. The fuck is wrong with people? So nobody wanted to believe that this sweet, devout, Bible school teacher was capable of such a crime. But once the truth was revealed, several lawyers refused to take the case defending her.
Okay, good.
They had a prosecutor, and he felt like he was damaged. He was like, this was just such an odd, sad, horrible thing. He was like, it was awful. And he was like, they could not find anybody who wanted to defend her. Originally, she was declared unfit to stand trial. She admitted to methodically feeding rat poison to her family, one member at a time, in their food and coffee. She never gave an explanation or a reason. She was sent to a mental hospital in early 1968, where she worked as a cook.
Are you shitting me?
I'm not shitting you.
Come on.
I'm like, who the fuck made that decision? Because insane people who poison their family's food are well prepared for a job in food service.
What the hell?
Right?
If you're a prisoner and you're like, what are you in for? And she's like, poisoning my family to death. And they're like, pardon?
Do you want another scoop? Scoozy? One scoop or two? So, I was like, did anybody read her records? Or wonder why she was there in the first place? That boggled my mind. That they would, yeah. So, in 1976, she was declared fit to stand trial. Her psychiatrist, whoever was treating her, said she knows the difference between right and wrong. And her neighbors said she knew the difference between right and wrong. So she was 44 years old, and she was convicted of 5 murders and sentenced to 5 life sentences. The only person who visited her while she was in prison was her sister. And whenever her sister tried to talk to her about the murders, the only response she got was, I don't know. It doesn't matter what the question was.
Right.
Why did you do it? How do you feel? Do you feel guilty? Every question she asked was answered with, I don't know. So she was denied parole 17 times.
Yeah.
However, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and was released into the custody of her sister in April of 1999, although a condition of her parole was that she had to check in every year. Here's my question for you. If one of your siblings did that, would you be able to take them in?
I wouldn't let them cook for me.
Well,
other than that, I don't know. I have to think about it.
Right? I guess
it's tricky, isn't it?
I should pose that to the listeners.
Right?
Could you take in your sibling knowing that she didn't try to hide it? She didn't deny it. She poisoned her entire family. I don't know that I could ever close my eyes.
Yeah. You're like, how do I know you're not putting it in the food that's already in like the fridge or the drinks or my bottle of iced tea?
Exactly. So she was, eventually she was confined to a wheelchair and she passed away in a nursing home in February of 2010. So she had
that
10 years.
Very karmic though. If they wouldn't have been a pleasant.
No. They also said she died alone, but I'm thinking that may have been journalistic hyperbole.
Right. I like to say that.
So for me, the case poses some interesting questions. As I was talking about last time, I always want to know why. When someone does something so out of the ordinary.
Because here's the thing. Like sometimes when it's the slow poisoning, it's Munchausen's by proxy where they're getting off on taking care of you. And actually that story I remembered after you started that story I told at one point, he said, I just like to take care of you. And that to me went, oh shit, that's Munchausen's by proxy. If that's true, if that's truly the reason. And so those ones make sense, but just literally going that long, her youngest was 13.
Yes.
When she killed him, going that long and then suddenly being like, fuck them all. One at a time.
And just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
like
there was no caretaker. So it wasn't Munchausen's by proxy. So.
Yeah.
No, I don't understand what the...
So that's, and she never answered that question. So while looking through the articles, because they all had the same source, because you know how that goes. I found a few that labeled her as a black widow, which, if anybody's unfamiliar with that term, that's a woman who marries and kills husbands.
Repeatedly for the money.
Yeah, for the money. And while she did collect, first of all, she only killed one husband.
Yeah. She did have insurance.
She did have insurance. I think the total I saw was $31,000 for all three of them. And she did tithe 10%, but nothing mentioned her buying a new car, buying a new house, living high on the hog, flashing her money. There was no mention of that.
Well, the last son, I suppose she still could have possibly had one on him if she'd taken it out, but anything else would have paid off to the widow. Although she probably was then, I'll take out the widow. But who knows if she had, Yeah, it just didn't. And the people who claim, well, she obviously did it for the money. And I'm like, but she didn't. Unless she started doing it for the money and went, this is fun.
Well, that could be.
I don't know.
So she wasn't out kicking up her heels at the local bars. There were a couple of people who claimed that she killed her family for religious reasons so that they wouldn't have to suffer the torment of being alive in a less than perfect world.
Yes.
And could go to their heavenly reward. But I couldn't find any support for that thesis.
Right. I mean, there have been killers who have said that.
Yeah.
I mean, the shooter in Texas, the tower shooter, that was I took out my mom so that she didn't have to deal with the world. She didn't have to deal with being embarrassed about what I did. Well, okay, don't do the thing and then she won't be embarrassed about it.
But yeah, it just, I can't imagine. Now, I can't imagine life was easy being married at 15.
No.
But I don't think just the fact of being married at the age of 15, it happened a lot back then.
Yeah.
So I don't see...
Do what someone would do and just run away then.
Run away or just kill
Leave
your
them
husband.
alive.
You know.
Those boys were getting old enough that they weren't going to be there that much longer.
Exactly. I'm like, they're just getting fun when they become... I know people have teenagers have a well-deserved reputation, but that's when you can start having
That's when they're people, though, and you can talk to them.
Interesting conversations, and you can talk about books and movies and whatever. Yeah. Here, have another cup of coffee, son.
Jesus.
So how are you going to uplift us after that?
Oh, I'm not. So I actually had planned this for our last episode with Megan Rudder because it was similar to what she was doing. And then I realized it was just too similar and I didn't want to do the same thing in the same episode. So I'm covering the Central Park Jogger Case, which is also known as the Central Park 5. Sources: Wikipedia, New York Times, BBC News, People, History, New York Magazine, PBS, and The New Yorker. So clearly, this occurred in New York. Okay. In the 1980s, New York City was a hotbed of violent crime, racial division, drug use, and police distrust. There were 1,896 homicides in 1988 in New York City alone. On April 19th, 1989, at about 9 p.m., 33 teenagers from East Harlem invaded Central Park at the North End, committing a series of crimes that would leave Manhattan reeling and the rest of the country thinking of Central Park from then on out as an extremely dangerous place. And how does anybody go in there? And, then it was in movies, it was this crime-riddled place. And then you see it and you're like, oh, it's actually really lovely there. I can see why people walk. So joggers and bicyclists were attacked with rocks, sticks, and pipes. Some of them were robbed. Homeless people were harassed. A cab was attacked with rocks. There were 2 men that were brutally beaten. Oh. Police arrived to the park after multiple calls. There were call boxes in the park. And so people were able to get to it pretty quickly. A couple on a tandem bike were attacked. So police arrived to the park after those calls and they start combing the park. And several teenagers are arrested, but they were kind of working their way down south for a while and then they vacated. Some of the teenagers, when they were in the cells, the original holding cells together, were singing Tone Loc's Wild Thing, and they referred to what they'd done as wilding.
Oh, okay.
Or doing the wild thing.
Okay.
Which I'm pretty sure that's not what it was in the...
I don't think so.
Pretty sure it was sexual.
I was
anyway,
going to say they would have gotten in less trouble if they'd been doing the wild thing.
Well,
the way we understand
right.
it.
So in all, there would be 9 victims who came forward that night. There were call boxes And so the police got there pretty fast, right? So at about 1:30 a.m., a woman named Tricia Maley was found unconscious near the 102nd Street crossing in the Northwoods area by two construction workers walking home from a bar. They discovered her in a ravine near a body of water called the Loch after she moaned. Luckily, so just she'd been there for 4 hours at that point, about. She had been severely beaten and raped. An 18-inch wide swath of flattened grass showed where she had been knocked out and then dragged through the grass 300 feet from the path. She was naked, she was bound and gagged, and suffering from fractures to the skull and face. Her left eye had actually come out of the socket from the beating to her head. Due to hypothermia, brain damage, internal bleeding, and the loss of 75 to 80% of her blood, she remained in a coma for 12 days.
Oh my God.
It would be 24 hours before police could even identify her in the first place. They didn't know who this woman was for a full day. Doctors at Metropolitan Hospital in East Harlem were certain she would die or spend the rest of her life in a coma and certainly have brain damage. So she was actually given last rites during this time. And in the meantime, this is hitting the press. The police are seeking who did this. It's horrified everybody. Instead, she awoke at the end of 12 days. Unable to talk, walk, or read at that point, but she was transferred to Gaylord Hospital for 6 months of rehabilitation and learned everything again. It wouldn't be until July 1989 that she would walk. 8 months after the attack, she was able to return to work.
Wow.
And she was 28 years old when this happened. She held an MBA and an MA from 2 different Yale universities and was a VP at Salomon Brothers, an investment banking firm. So this was an accomplished woman. So she did go back to work after 8 months. She dealt with ongoing balance and vision issues. She still has them. And had no memory of the event surrounding the attack or about the hour before the attack. So she was able to say, I went for a jog at about 9 p.m. I entered the park around them.
Right.
So she actually entered around the same. She missed that mob of boys initially.
Okay.
By probably minutes. All right. So again, she'd lain there for 4 hours just bleeding out. At the time of the attack, Maley was 28 years old. And the crime, where this goes, is going to end up ruining the lives of several boys. They were super young. As the police progressed through the park that night, there were 20 arrests that night. And names given later would indicate 33 teenagers. So it was around there. Okay. Certainly there might have been names left off. Certainly there might have been names added. But those were what other kids that were caught were turning in as having been there. Yeah. There would be 6 males initially considered suspects in Maley's rape. 14-year-old Raymond Santana, 14-year-old Kevin Richardson, 14-year-old Stephen Lopez, 15-year-old Antron McRae, 15-year-old Yusuf Salam, and 16-year-old Corey Wise. Santana and Richardson were picked up that night. They were still in the park. And Santana has admitted to giving many the names of other participants. The other 3 would be picked up the next day, 2 of them having been fingered by other boys already in custody. But Corey Wise, the one who was 16, he hadn't originally even been a suspect. He hadn't been in the park the night before. He was just with Salam when the police came to pick him up, and he came along with him to support him. And instead ended up in a room being questioned and then being accused for this crime. Moral support turned into, you're a rapist, an attempted murderer. Salam said that he could hear Wise being beaten in a neighboring room, and the cops would come in and tell him he was next. They were questioned for hours and hours and hours without their parents present, given no food or water. These are minors, I want to remind you, 14 to 16 years old. They were all indicted May 10th for attempted murder of both Maley and one of the joggers, and some of them had charges pressed for both of the joggers that were seriously injured. As well as sexual abuse and rape of Maley, robbery for the jogger, assault for multiple victims, and riot as a charge.
So it sounds, were other people charged or just these boys?
So these boys were the only ones charged with the attack on Maley. But there were other boys charged for the rioting and the attacks on joggers and bicyclists.
I was like, because really, are they pinning the whole fucking thing on these?
And I will say that they admitted then and kind of repeatedly after, we were involved in the melee, right? But we did not rape this woman. Like,
Right.
we weren't. So anyway, after hours of interrogation without their parents present, no food or water again, like I said, there was no videotape of that early interrogation. 5 of the 6 boys confessed to being accomplices at the rape, but not having raped her. So basically, after they tell us you were involved, what they started saying was, well, I held her arm, yeah, and like I hit her, or I kicked her once, or
Yeah.
they start trying to give the police what they think they want. So 4 of them confessed on tape in front of their parents once their parents were brought in. Several of them named others involved. Salam made a verbal confession. They never asked for attorneys, and it wasn't until Salam's mother showed up and insisted he get an attorney that an attorney was involved. At the time, though, here's the thing about Salam. His friend was 16. Salam claimed to be 16 when they took him in. Here's the problem with that. At 16, you legally were no longer needed to have an adult there. You were an adult. So he put himself in that situation by lying about his age. He actually had a transit pass that had the false age on it because he used it to get into shit. He had a fake ID.
How old was he?
15.
Okay.
Wait. Salam. Yeah, he was 15.
Okay.
So anyway, like, Corey Wise was already in deep shit because he was 16. Salam said he was at first. So he wasn't considered a minor when they were first questioning it. And that would actually come back in appeals, and they were like, no. You told them you were 16 and showed them ID. They went off that basis. Lopez would end up pleading guilty to a lesser charge in January 91, which allowed him a reduced sentence, which would leave 5 other boys to be charged with the crime, and they'd become known as the Central Park 5. During coverage of the crimes, the news leaked the names of the minors, which was not supposed to happen because they were minors.
Right.
So in response, though, 2 papers took revenge by leaking the rape victim's name. Also not supposed to happen. She didn't do it. That pissed me off.
That's so wrong.
It was like, why? So I'm just going to call out those papers, the City Sun and the Amsterdam News, for being shitty.
Beyond shitty.
Yeah. Families of the boys whose names had been leaked ended up receiving threats and being ostracized in their communities, all that stuff, because the information was out there. Even in the court cases, Maylee's name was never given because she did not have to be identified as the victim. But those 2 papers put it out. Donald Trump, this is where people may have heard about this more recently, took out a full-page ad in 4 major city papers condemning the perpetrators, saying bring back the death penalty. That's actually written in huge letters on there. And it started a firestorm in the city. So verbiage...
He's always been a shit stick.
He's always been a shit stick. So the verbiage used by the press became super inflammatory. And, everybody in the city was like, that's right, let's get them. They were interviewed as adults, and they were like, had this been in an earlier era, we would have been lynched. There never would have been a court case. Yeah, so the public they're like, all right, these boys are guilty. And so they really didn't get a chance at a fair trial. I looked at I saw articles that called them animals and savages, in the inflammatory, they're like, these animals attacked her. And so that was what they were going to be doing. Some papers in those first days were insinuating that it was a purposeful attack by boys of color on white victims. Here's the thing about that. The boys the 5 were all, most of them were black, and then at least one of them was Hispanic. But the victims were also all races. Maylee was white. The rape victim was white, but not all the other victims were. And some of the boys arrested were white.
Okay.
Just not in the 5. So that, in other words, that was bullshit.
Right.
And it was meant to divide everybody. It was meant to sick everybody on these boys. And again, playing on racial tensions that already existed in New York at the time. In terms of evidence, there was no sign of significant trampling around Maylee to indicate a horde of boys were on her. Okay. 2 hairs were found in Richardson's underwear and were presented as being consistent with the victim's hair. I will say that later, when they're trying all the, DNA testing improvements would show the DNA did not match Maylee.
Okay.
But that would be years later after he's convicted. There was physical evidence in the form of dirt and grass stains. For example, one of the boys' underwear was held up in court, and there were stains. But they hadn't actually been tested. For the record, they weren't tested. This is soil, this is grass. They just eyeballed it and said, look at this. Clearly he had his pants down. And there's And I'm like, or he was a teenage boy with dirty underwear, but okay.
I'm sorry, that's where my mind went.
In addition, 2 semen samples were found. One in her cervix, one on her sock, both with the same DNA. None of the suspects had matching DNA. DNA belonged to none of those boys. And within weeks of their coerced confessions, all would withdraw the confessions and plead not guilty. They refused plea deals, refusing to plead guilty for the rape and assault on Mei Li. They said over and over, yeah, we were there fucking around, right? We were throwing the rocks.
Rioting.
We were doing the bad things. We did not touch this woman. The judge, Thomas B. Galligan, allowed all the confessions, including Salam's unsigned written confession. So he had verbally said something. It was written down. He did not sign it. It was allowed. And the judge would later state that the reason he allowed that one is because Salam had lied about his age. And I'm like, what does that have to do with an unsigned confession?
Yeah.
Whatever.
I hope that judge died of...
There were a lot of inconsistencies
Postulant
between between their stories, and most of them didn't even actually correctly say where the crime had been committed. Most of them had assumed it was near a reservoir that's there. Because again, this goes back to what we discussed with Megan. This was in the news everywhere by the time some of these boys... well, and bearing in mind, though, they were picked up within a day of it. Like, before they even identified her, they were picked up. But surely you'd be talking to your family or whatever.
Yeah.
And they would talk about it. You would hear some of the details, right? The trials were split in 2, with the first one beginning June 25th, 1990, and ending August 18th. These defendants were McRae, Salam, and Santana. The jury was thoroughly mixed race, which actually, that's a good thing. It was 4 white jurors, 4 black jurors, 3 Hispanic jurors, 1 Asian juror. And they found them guilty of assault, rape, and robbery. I think some got charged with rioting. One of the boys got more serious. They got sodomy. So all of those were involving Mei Li and the seriously injured jogger whose name was John Laughlin. They acquitted the boys of attempted murder charges. All received the maximum sentence of 5 to 10 years, ultimately serving 6 to 7 of those, all in youth facilities. And that's just those 3 from that day. The second trial was for Richardson and Wise. Bearing in mind, Wise was the 16-year-old who wasn't even fucking there. And started October 22nd, 1990, going through December. This was the only trial in which Mei Li was cross-examined. She didn't have to get on the stand in the first one. She was on the stand in this one, and she did not have to give her name, but they allowed the lawyer to cross-examine her.
Why would she testify?
She has no memory. I don't know.
That's my thing.
I think about the effects afterwards, her injuries.
I understand
she actually
that,
felt like she'd been raped by more than one person. So she was treated like, even with how she'd been in the news and the sensibilities of the people in the city, the attorney was horrific. She was treated like every rape victim ever. I was getting so mad reading these, some of the questions that were asked. She was accused of exaggerating her injuries. She was asked if she was sexually active.
Her eyeball was out of the socket.
Yeah. She was asked if she had had sex with her boyfriend and when was she last sexually active with her boy. Who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares?
He didn't.
And then it was insinuated, well, maybe somebody you knew attacked you in the park. Okay, well, I don't know. Shit like that. So they also questioned whether she'd been similarly assaulted in the past. That one really...
What the fuck does that have to do
pissed
with
me off.
anything?
Like, are you asking if she just likes to run around screaming rape? Because she's not the one who screamed rape, because she was unconscious.
Almost dead.
So, for 12 days. Anyway, Richardson was the only one of the boys convicted of attempted murder. I do not know why. There was no explanation for why. I imagine it was something in his confession, something he said he did, because some of them did. Well, I hit her in the head, you know, like...
Right.
He still received the same 5 to 10 years as the other minors, and served about the same time as they did in the juvenile facility. Then we get to Corey Wise. He was 16. He was charged as an adult. He was convicted of sexual abuse, assault, and riot, but acquitted of rape and attempted murder. He was given a sentence of 5 to 15 years in 4 prisons. I mean, he was put in one. Rikers, Attica, Windy State, and Auburn State. He was in like 2 notorious ones right there. Like we all heard of Rikers and Attica. He served 13 years. Wise broke twice in court. Once after the DA's opening statement, where he had to be removed temporarily after his outburst. He was like, you're lying. You're making all of this up. And once when he was convicted, when he yelled, you're going to pay for this. Jesus is going to get you. You made this up at the DA. 5 other teens would end up being convicted in the other crimes involved. So there were 5 other that went through those charges. While in Auburn State Correctional Facility, they were listed. I didn't feel like listing this because it's not about them. While in Auburn State Correctional Facility in 2001, Wise met a man named Matthias Reyes, who would admit to the rape of May Lee. They ran into each other twice, and he heard the story. So he would say, like, he was like, I had a religious awakening, and it was the right thing to do to come forward. After Reyes confessed in 2002, Wise was released from prison. He was still there serving his time. Reyes was serving a life sentence at the time as a serial rapist and murderer, and had been suspected of raping a woman in the same area as Maylee 2 days before her attack. But because she had not been expected to live, Maylee's case had been investigated as a homicide from the beginning, so it hadn't gone to the same folks as the rape cases, and they were not communicating.
Gotcha.
I mean, there's still issues with communication now, but then horrible, right? Even the semen evidence was never compared because they had it from both. Different investigations, different investigators. Otherwise, the semen evidence probably would have been compared. There were similarities in the attacks. So once tested after his confession, his semen was a match in both the crimes. So it was his that was found in her semen, her cervix and her sock. And he had also tied up at least one of the other victims in a similar fashion with the t-shirt. That's what had bound her, was her t-shirt. He was 17 years old when he raped Maylee. His rapes were violent, obviously, with one of the women who was pregnant dying, and he would rob the women as well, as he was living in his van at the time, which he typically parked near 102nd Street, which was the crossing where the attack happened. Though he'd been convicted for 4 rapes, he has since been linked to at least 8, all within a 7-month period. The reason he was originally caught was because a victim escaped her apartment when he went to get a knife. His MO at the time was he would slash their eyes to blind them. So they couldn't identify him later. So he was getting the knife, and she got out of her apartment and ran, and a janitor happened to be out there. He actually took the guy down with his mop.
Yay!
Which is such a, like, superhero.
That is so awesome.
And held him until the police got there. So, the woman he killed, when I was finding my place, the woman he killed was 24-year-old Lourdes Gonzalez, and her 3 children were present and watching. She was pregnant also, as their mother was raped and murdered. His first day in court for the original crimes, he punched his lawyer in the head, laid the dude out, screamed some shit at the judge, who was the same judge who had tried the Central Park 5, I think was the story, but I don't remember for sure.
He needed to get punched.
And that, by the way, was... yeah, so anyway, then he gets life. The sentence, and he was never tried, just to put that out there, for the Central Park 5's crime, what they were originally, because it was past the statute.
For that.
But at least they were able to say, okay, like, then these boys didn't do it, right? Well, so the sentences of the Central Park 5 were vacated after Reyes's guilt was established through the evidence. This also included all the assault charges, though they had actually... most of them at least likely committed those crimes, and their confessions were consistent on that even after they are, listen, I did the things, but I didn't do the thing. Capital T. But they had served their time for that. The other kids who had gotten the charges just for those things were out, so they went ahead and commuted it. That was a big bone of contention in the city, whether those charges should have been vacated or just the rape charges. And all these boys, except for Wise, were out of prison by the time Reyes came forward. A 2003 lawsuit. I wanted to point out, too, they were removed from the sex offender registries. That's a huge one because, that had been impacting their work, what they could, where they could live, all that stuff. So they were taken off those registries.
That's good.
Okay. A 2003 lawsuit against the city by all 5 of the men resulted in 2 payouts. $41 million in 2013 and $3.9 million in 2016, where the lawyers tried to milk a little bit more out. Wise was given a larger portion because he served longer.
Okay.
It was like $7 million for each of them and $12 million type split. You know. So bear in mind, the first lawsuit was brought in 2003. It went through a bunch of bullshit, whether they could even have this lawsuit. The DA switched, the mayor switched, and the new mayor was like, no, the first mayor did not want these charges removed. That's why it took until 2013 and 2016, 10 years for the first payout. It took longer for this than all of them had served in prison. except for Wise.
That's crazy.
A 2002 commission report, referred to as the Armstrong Report, stated that there wasn't sufficient proof to show that the Central Park Five had not taken part in the rape just because this man said he was the only one who did it. And a statement of a convicted rapist and murderer shouldn't have been found that reliable. It also showed that the confessions of the five had differed in some details, most of these being who did what. I held her arm. No, this guy was the one who raped her. No, that guy was the one who raped her. There had been consistencies between them as well, including details about her being knocked out and dragged to a new location, that she had been held by some and beaten and molested by others. It was felt that Reyes had found her after the others had left her, and that's when he'd raped her. That he was not part of the mob. It was never suspected he was. And he was actually older than most of the mob by like a year, but whatever. So that was the story. And the officers who investigated them initially stand by it. But there's no compelling evidence. It was all circumstantial. It was grass stains on the underwear. There was no matching semen. How did all of them rape her and there were 2 samples of semen and there were 1 dude's? You know, like that. I'm like, sorry. No.
I'm sorry, because 14-year-old boys who were going looting in the park packed condoms?
Right? No, that should not. For her part, Maylee felt she had been attacked by more than one person and expressed that she wished they had been retried rather than just vacated. The NYPD were investigated and found not to have done anything wrong in their investigation. The chief medical officer and a forensic pathologist stated that it was impossible to know how many people had been involved in the attack, so they could neither confirm nor deny it was one person versus many. They said there's no evidence that can tell us one way or the other.
Oh, fine.
In 2014, and I think this is when we are all really hearing it, Trump wrote in the New York Daily News, he wrote like an op-ed or whatever, that the men were guilty and should never have been exonerated. I remember this. This was one of the reasons McCain dropped his endorsement of him, because he was like, leave him alone. You know, stop. In 2019, Trump again maintained the men were guilty and made public statements about it. Like, he really had a hard-on for these boys. Gonna leave that there. Wise suffered attacks in prison, at least one which nearly killed him, and frequently asked to be put in isolation in order to remain safe. This is also the reason he was at 4 prisons. He kept having to ask for transfers because he was a famous rapist. He still lives in New York City and donated a portion of his settlement to the Innocence Project of University of Colorado Law School. He's a speaker and justice reform activist. And I just have to say this before I go into others. I have pictures of them I'll be posting as adults. And the 4 guys, you know, the 4 other guys kind of have aged normally. And when you see Corey Wise, you can see he lived through some shit. I could see which one he was before I read the labels.
Okay. That makes sense.
He obviously had it hard.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even fucking there. That's the part that kills me. He suffered the worst. And, I mean, I mentioned it later. Salam has dealt with a lot of guilt over Wise coming with him to support him and make sure he was okay, and then having this happen to him.
Well, yeah. How do you even...
Yeah. So the 4 other men were able to get not only their GEDs, but their associate's degrees in prison. So they were given a little bit of that leg up. Apparently the juvenile system was a little bit... Prison is supposed to be about reform too. I'm just to throw that out there.
Okay, yes.
But it's not. And we all know it's not. That's a joke.
It's about punishment.
Some of them do. Serial killers who are in there for life get degrees. They're not going to get out. They're not being reformed. They're in there for life and they have degrees. And so... what? They can defend themselves in their appeals processes later in their parole hearings. Anyway, Richardson, Salam, and Santana have worked as advocates for criminal justice reform and were instrumental in the 2018 law in New York that requires videotaping for full interrogations in certain crimes. And at least one of them actually does work with the Innocence Project, possibly 2 of them. Santana was re-imprisoned for breaking parole and found guilty for drug possession in 98, but was released early after the vacation of his earlier crimes because he had gotten a stricter penalty because it wasn't his first offense.
Gotcha.
He has a clothing company called Park Madison, NYC. Salam has dealt with significant guilt, like I said, but he received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Barack Obama in 2016 for his work within the criminal justice system and with false confessions and stuff like that. So he's a major activist in it. McRae moved to Georgia and has a family. He's really the only one that hasn't done a lot, and no, that's no guff against him or anything like that. I totally,
I can completely understand.
Do what you need to heal.
Yeah,
you know?
get the fuck away from it.
I'm actually surprised that, I mean, that convinces me of their innocence more, that they're like, we are going to fix this thing that happened to us. It's not, I feel like if you were guilty, you would slink off, you know, like you wouldn't be fighting for reform and trying to help other people in similar circumstances.
Right. Unless you were some kind of monster.
Yeah. You know? So anyway, Maylee did retake her position for the investment bank after, but she ended up leaving soon. Not long after that. I didn't have the actual, like, was it years? Was it months? And she started working with victims of sexual assault and physical violence at Mount Sinai Hospital. I mean, this case is horrendous. A lot of good has come out of it from all of the victims.
Yes.
And what they've done. She wrote a memoir, I Am the Central Park Jogger. And that was actually, I think it came out in like 2003. And that was the first where she actually made her name public. Other than those two asshole newspapers. She still jogs. She actually returned to doing that once she could walk and do that again.
When she had her balance back.
She was like, fuck you, I'm going back. You don't get to ruin my life. I feel like this was an impressive woman before her attack. And she came back from it and continued to be. The week of Maylee's attack, there were another 28 first-degree rapes and attempted first-degree rapes in New York City. In the city.
That were reported.
Within 7 days that were reported. Yep. In May 1989, a 30-year-old black woman was raped and thrown from the top of a 4-story building by 3 young men. A 4-story building off the roof. She did live. She had to go through intensive therapy and all of that. She probably had long-term issues. The media barely covered it. And I will say here, I'm not naming her because I didn't see her name pop up. And so I wasn't going to seek it out because I assume that means she doesn't want her name out there.
Right.
But the media barely covered it. And ultimately, the men were convicted. They were caught. But to me, this made a media bias very clear. Because most of the other women who, those 28 women, right? Most of them were women of color. Because New York City at the time, I mean, that area was a higher population, more diverse population, right? Yes. So anyway, like none of those other rapes made the news. And so it's another, what is it, Gabby, whatever her name is.
Yes.
I think part of that is the brutality of it, but a woman being thrown off a roof.
That's pretty
should have made as much news.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it was so quickly solved and the right people caught and all of that. I just don't know. You know, I'm sure there's other factors that play into it. I still think there's a media bias, and we've seen that. We see that now. Yes. In crimes against women of color versus crimes against white women. We see it just over and over and over. And of course, again, it's in the news because of that one young woman. Because I don't think an Instagram account made her that big of a person. She wasn't a movie star. She wasn't... No. But she was a pretty white girl that disappeared. And in the meantime, while they were investigating her and all the media outlets, and probably in other countries too, you know, it was on BBC, you know, it wasn't all that shit. And all these other women's crimes go unreported and unsolved. So there's a very clear bias that exists. And I did want to mention that crime, even though I can't mention her name.
She deserves her privacy.
Yes. But, yeah. But it also needs to be out there that happened. The same week.
A 4-story building.
4-story building. Brutalize this woman and then throw her off. Because, of course, well, how did we kill her? We don't have to hands-on kill her. We'll throw her off the roof.
Yep.
And she lived.
They used her and discarded her.
Yes. Jeez. It's disgusting.
It is.
So, yeah, not a light ending.
No.
Not really neither of them was. So. No. Yeah.
Yes. So that was your uplifting stories for this week. Who knows what we'll be back with next week?
Yeah. I don't have it planned yet.
I don't.
I do have an idea for one.
I do too. We'll talk. We'll talk.
We'll talk.
Oh my God. We'll have coffee. We'll talk.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much for listening.
We'll talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.